So in today's video, a DIY install of an exterior door. Stick around.
Here's the before. Here's the after.
Now to start off, I simply had to remove the old door, took it off the hinges, and I set it to the side. I removed the jamb. But in this case, I had to add some framing because I had to make up for some space because the new door was a little smaller. I added a barrier, and then I was going to recycle some cedar for the siding here. Just use the cedar and some screws.
So now at this point, when I go to install the door frame, I'm taking a non-traditional approach. Normally when you get a pre-hung door, you would install it pre-hung, basically leave the door in the frame before you do the installation. In my case, I'm installing the frame separate of the door. However, I did go ahead and make effort to square off this frame. In my case, I simply wanted to paint the door first. I wanted this paint to dry for several days before I went ahead and put it back in. So that's why I did it in this case. But normally if you get a pre-hung door, you would install the door pre-hung.
Now with the frame in place, I can install a 3-inch screw into the top hinge. I wanted to get the hinge side perfectly plumb, so I used shims as necessary and then secured it in place with the 3-inch screws. Added a temporary screw to the other side, and then I could reinsert the door into the hinges using the hinge pins. Now I could test the door, and I want to make sure this gap between the door jamb and the door is consistent. So I add shims as necessary and then screw off the jamb side of the door. Now at this point we have a nice consistent space between the jamb and the door. Now installing the door hardware is probably one of the simpler parts. You simply insert it, and it's generally a couple screws that you got to snug up. Same thing with the handle, you just insert it, line it up, and then tighten it up with a couple screws. And then finally you just got to install the strike plate, and now we have a functional door. Now at this point I came back with some spray foam insulation, and I filled the gap between the door frame and the framing and siding of the house. Then I came back with some flashing tape. I started on the sides and then finished up with the top piece of flashing tape. Now for the trim, I used wood up top and some trim nails, but on the side I did use PVC because the sides would get a little bit more exposed to weather. After some caulking and some paint, here's our door. So I think it turned out pretty well.
So that's it, and in my opinion, an exterior door installation can be a DIY project. It can be a little tricky if you got to do some reframing and some custom work. However, with a little research and effort, it can be done. So thanks for watching.